Hello and welcome to the Kent Politics Show live on KMTV, the show that gets Kent's politicians talking, especially today. I'm Abby Hook and you're joining us for a moment that will go down as a seismic shift in Kent's political history, painting the county in a lighter shade of blue. Reform UK has taken full control of Kent County Council with a huge 55 seats. The Conservatives haven't budged since 1997, but after 3 decades of control, they'll come away with just 5 seats so far. This evening we'll be analysing what this means for Kent and bringing you reaction from across the political spectrum. Well, we've got Gabriel Morris just outside of Sevenoaks. He's been speaking to former leader of KCC Roger Goff, who described the situation earlier on as apocalyptic. And we've got Ollie leader over in Maidstone to get reaction from the Liberal Democrats, who gained more seats than the Tories so far, and from the Green Party, who have made historic national gains too. But let's go to local democracy reporter Gabriel Morris first now. Gabriel, is this what we expected to happen?
This is completely unprecedented, quite frankly, Abby. We've been making predictions on the programme, and if you remember from the Kent Morning Show, I did say the most likely scenario for a majority would be Reform UK. We knew they would do well. This well, I don't think anyone expected it. I'm stood right now in a Conservative stronghold. It's Oxford. This has almost always been Conservative. And certainly when it comes to the general election, the constituency level, the MP's always been Conservative here. But that seems no more. Opinion has certainly changed today. And it's not just here, it's in every single corner of Kent. Reform getting a clear majority. They needed 41, but they look like they're going to get somewhere between 55 and 56, 57 seats by the end of today. Now, this was definitely an option, but being the new kids on the block, I don't think anyone expected this. And certainly a Reform winning in this seat here, which is where Roger Goff, the last leader, the Conservative leader of Kent County Council, is in control of, or was in control of. I don't think he expected that, and I spoke to him earlier today.
You know, when we saw some of the results in Staffordshire and Lincolnshire and so on, that was, very, very clear that it was going to be not just a bad, but a disastrous day for the Conservatives. And so it has played out, and I think the party's obviously got to reflect on that.
Can Conservatives bring it back at the next elections for those unitaries?
Things can turn around quickly, but I think we would be foolish to think that won't, or I think that will happen without significant self-examination, a big process of change, and addressing the big issues in such a way that voters see us once more as a proposition that they can entertain and ultimately support.
Well, Gabriel, the question on everybody's minds now: what will a Reform Council actually look like? What can we expect to change?
Well, they've been banging on their leaflets, on their campaign bus about some big national policies. And this has been highlighted by many other opposition parties saying, well, that's not what Kent County Council does. And we'll have more on that later on in the programme about why Reform have been campaigning on that and some of the concerns. But one of their big campaigns and one of their big promises is they're going to make Kent County Council more efficient. Nigel Farage told me a month ago when he visited Kent that he wants to bring Doge Trump-style politics to Kent County Council. Now that could be cutting back on maybe staff, or perhaps maybe making things more efficient, they say. What will that look like though for different services? Kent County Council old leader Roger Goff for Conservatives, where he said, well, hold on a minute, Reform, we've tried to do that. What are you going to find? And quite frankly, what are they going to find? What is that going to be? Now, one of the biggest issues we often hear from parents across Kent is children with special educational needs. And I have spoken to some in the lead up to this election, and quite frankly, they are quite worried about what Reform could do. Their children have access to high needs funding alongside homeschool transport in some instances. They're worried, could they lose this under the Doge style politics? Well, I've been speaking to the current Kent Reform leader, Dirk Ross, a little bit about this and what that might mean for parents.
Gabriel, just before we hear from him, we're all ears peeled too, but also the counting has completed. To bring you some of the final details, we should have them at the bottom of the screen as well for you. 57 to Reform UK, 12 to the Liberal Democrats, 5 to the Conservatives, 5 to the Greens, 2 to Labour, 0 for Independent, 0 for the Residents' Association. So that's the latest just in. The counting has complete in the Kent County Council elections. Reform 57. Gabriel, just a very quick response from that from you.
Well, that number there is about, for the Conservatives, is about 8% of what they won in 2021. Opinions completely changed. We've even seen Reform taking seats off Labour today. Labour won the general election last year. They triumphed in Kent, turning so many seats red. This time last year, or after that general election, we would have thought it would have been a very different picture today, with seats going red. Instead, they've gone light blue. Shall we get that Dirk Ross clip now and let's see what he has to say about those SEND cuts and his main priorities when he enters Kent County Council in the coming days?
No, but there's a lot of money there, but it's spent not always in the right way. Obviously we have to look at all children because the pot is for all children. It's not just this is special needs, this is, say, a regular school. The funding comes from the same pot, and we've got to make sure that we've got outcomes. And we want children to integrate, and many are in regular state schools, some if it really is a specialist need. And it's to make sure to get the best outcome, but we've obviously got to spend the money wisely to look at the contracts, because there are some shocking figures of money that you're spending and thinking, right, we've been held over a barrel by private providers and we have a legal obligation to pay, so actually you're paying a higher amount because they know that you've got no other choice.
Do your parents seem to be worried that they could be losing high needs funding, the home to school transport?
No, they just need to be concerned that we want to get the backlog fixed. We want to get, obviously we're now having to deal with many parents that, not on tons of money, that were in private schools because the county council or academies weren't able to provide the education their child needs, and now can't afford the tax that's been put on them by Labour, and now coming back into the state sector. Obviously we've got to look at place numbers. We don't know how many are going to come across, so we've got a whole dynamic of, right, for this term coming up in September, a lot of work around transport, where the child needs to be, costings, is it the right at this school, the distance, because obviously some of the things, they're coming part of the way through the term where some of the things have already been planned in already. So we want, this is an urgent matter that's got to be dealt with really quickly and not just put on the back burner like the EHCPs. We've got to really, this is a big issue and it's got to be dealt with over the summer.
What is Reform UK's priorities for when you enter Kent County Council?
It's to go through the books, because we've got money, obviously we've got massive contracts for potholes, yet we've got 58,000 and they're getting worse. We've got social care issues, disability issues, we've got transport, we've got a whole myriad of things. Money's been spent, it's not been spent effectively. We want to know and look at every contract, social care contract, children's contracts, because they're roughly 2/3 of the taxpayers' money.
So Reform will be taking over Kent County Council, and this is all the parties have been talking about during this election campaign. They've frankly been so scared of them. Today they've even been telling me they are inexperienced councillors. Reform say, well, hold on a minute, a fresh blood will be good for Kent County Council. The other thing they've been saying is they've been talking about national politics and their campaign has been misleading. Let's take a look at this.
One issue has dominated this campaign, and it's not potholes, adult social care or children with special educational needs. In fact, it's not any of the services Kent County Council actually runs. When parties speak to the media, they often steer the conversation towards one thing: the threat posed by Reform UK.
We believe we have a strong record, that we've seen Kent through really difficult times, and that this is not the time to trust the really important affairs of the County Council to people who simply rely on slogans.
Is that Reform UK?
You may judge that, but I couldn't possibly comment.
Nigel Farage has visited Kent twice during the campaign, stopping in all corners of the county. Some political groups have criticised Reform UK's campaign, calling it misleading, saying their slogans focus on issues the County Council doesn't even control.
who have just put absolute nonsense on their leaflets, things that can't be delivered by KCC, and they've just basically been misleading people.
What sort of things have they been putting on their leaflets, have you seen?
Stopping the boats. Obviously that's government policy, where the Labour government's working with France, not Rwanda, which is the sensible thing to do. But a civilised society just runs on structured immigration, which should be happening. They've been putting on things about planning issues, which are districts.
We put that criticism to Reform UK's current Kent leader. He defended the campaign without hesitation.
The migrant issue does have an impact because we've got people stuck in bad housing, socially, mould, and yet other people are coming in and getting facilities and treatment, money, and there is a disconnect. People feel there's an unfairness, that we've got a lot of people really suffering and they really are having a dreadful time, and then seeing the opposite, where money seems to be coming from nowhere to fund services. Think that, you know, this is not fairness, this is not good for our own citizens.
Reform UK has quickly made its presence felt across Kent. Before the elections, they held just 3 councillors, but after a string of by-election wins, and as counting got underway this afternoon, their growing success became clear.
Well, Gabriel, thank you very much for your coverage and reports as well. We'll have that interview with the former leader, Roger Goff, a bit later in the programme, but very important to see what Reform will be doing now. Gabriel, thank you very much. I know you'll be hot on the analysis for the next coming weeks as well. Just before we take a break, when we come back, we will be having Ollie Leader joining us on the programme. He's live from Maidstone. He'll be giving us more analysis from the impact of these elections as well. But just before we go, to tally up, the final results are in. 57 seats to Reform in the Kent County Council elections for 2025. I'll see you in a minute. Hello and welcome back to the Kent Politics Show live here on KMTV. Now, earlier in the programme, we were speaking with our local democracy reporter, Gabriel Morris. He's been today speaking with the former leader of Kent County Council, Roger Goff. Let's see his interview with him now.
Roger, first of all, just lost your seat. What's your reaction to that?
Well, clearly it is deeply disappointing. Some of these are communities that I've represented for 20 years and sought to do so to the best of my ability. And none of us likes losing elections. Having said which, the scale, I think, of what's happening, not just across this county, but also across the country, does rather put it all into perspective. So personally, I'm disappointed. I would like to have gone on representing that division, but that was not to be. And I think there's clearly something, as I say, much, much bigger than any of us going on.
Perhaps even in the country. What has gone wrong this year?
Well, I think overall the Conservative Party is still paying the price heavily for what happened when we were in government nationally, and particularly in 2021, 2022. I think that broke a lot of the bond between us and many of our voters, and I don't think that's ever been restored. And there is a wider sense of disenchantment by many people with established politics, with the two traditional governing parties. And I think that has played a very, very big part in what has happened. So, now Reform are clearly going to be the majority party on Kent County Council, and we will see what they seek to make of it. It's not wholly clear from their statements during the campaign as to what that'll amount to, but we'll have to see. Where
do you go from here? What's next for yourself, Roger?
I think I might actually enjoy the fact that this is an end to a period of 60-hour weeks, which has been the case for basically the last 5.5 years. And then I'll look to my next set of options. And I think there are a few things there, but let me work on that. It's it is a time clearly to start a new chapter in life.
What about for the Conservatives? Where do they go locally here in Kent? Because almost an entire wipeout, it seems, today.
Yeah, I mean, we will have to see which of our members have been returned to the county council, and it'll be clearly for them working with the Conservative Party more generally to set a direction for the Conservatives in Kent. But I think that's also in many ways, a part of the much wider question of the direction for the Conservatives nationally, and that's clearly something which the party is going to have to reflect on quite a bit.
What's your message to Reform? It seems like they're on trajectory to get a majority today. What would your message be to who is the next council leader of Kent County Council?
Well, whoever is the next leader, I wish them well, and it is a tremendous privilege to do that job. I've enjoyed, well, perhaps it's overdoing it sometimes, it's been pretty tough, but it is an extraordinarily demanding and rewarding role, and I'm delighted that I had the chance to do it for a bit over 5.5 years, and I wish them very well in it. I hope that in taking office, not just the leader, but their leadership group, actually take.
All right, now, the Conservatives may be facing an existential wipeout here in Kent, but it's not just Reform UK who have benefited from this decline, with the Liberal Democrats gaining several electoral divisions alongside the Green Party too, with nationally the picture looking pretty positive for them. So what will the opposition benches at Kent County Council look like? Well, our politics producer, Ollie Leader, is outside County Hall right now. Ollie, thank you very much for joining us today. There you are. It's been a very strange day. It's all a bit of a rush, and then just before we've come on air and while we're on air, those final numbers come in as well. But just give us an idea of the atmosphere where you are. It's still as eerily quiet as it was at 7 a.m. this morning when Gabriel was there.
I think it's very interesting you mentioned the opposition benches, Abby, because they're going to look very, very different. For the last hour, I've seen familiar faces from parties filtering in, collecting their belongings, clearing out their offices. Big KCC heavy hitters, figures like Peter Oakford, the finance man for the Conservative administration, ousted today alongside figures such as Roger Goff. It's going to be a very, very different KCC, and one where, strangely, it's going to be the Liberal Democrats in official opposition against Reform, and even stranger, perhaps, the Green Party on level footing with the Conservatives, with 5 councillors apiece. And I spoke to one of those Green councillors, Rich Lehman. They were perhaps hoping for slightly better. We were expecting the leader of the Green Party, one of the co-leaders, to be here today, and they never materialised, perhaps because they only managed to secure 5 councillors. But he says it was a good day for the Green Party. They haven't really lost anything they won in 2021. And here's a clip of him talking about what he thinks the election really signifies here in Kent.
That's a very good question. I mean, it's been changing throughout the day. I was delighted to hold my seat, and when I did, I suspected that we might see a lot more Green councillors across Kent coming on board, but it's just been a tidal wave of reform. And I can understand why that is. I've been talking to people on the doorstep over the last couple of weeks, people who were let down by the Conservatives up until last year's general election now feel let down by Labour because Labour have not proved to be the solution that they hoped when they voted for Labour last year.
Rich Lehman talking to you earlier there, Ollie. Will this be much different for those opposition benches then?
I think it's a major sea change for KCC because the Greens did better than they did a few years ago, up 4 on 2021, and Liberal Democrats up 5. They now have 12 councillors in play. Obviously, we do have quite a sizable Reform UK majority, 57 seats. They have never ran in this capacity before at KCC. And it's going to be very different for Labour as well. They were the opposition party. Now they just have 2 solitary councillors on the benches. There's not a single independent in sight as well. And the Liberal Democrats will probably be quite happy. They've been putting a lot of energy into campaigning in Kent. Their deputy leader came down, Ed Davey, hitting the campaign trail this week as well in the lead up to polling day. So it really was a big push over the line to replicate some of those results from Tunbridge Wells last year, where the Liberal Democrats did quite well. And we spoke to Richard Streetfield, one of the key Liberal Democrat councillors in the group, about what he thinks is the future for Liberal Democrats here in the county.
Generally, it's an incredible picture. Reform sweeping away the Conservative administration, and we'll have to form a new administration that will lead the county into devolution and to keep it afloat for the next 4 years. It's an absolute political earthquake. The leader of the council described it as an apocalypse for his party, and indeed it is. It looks as though the Liberal Democrats will form an official opposition, and we will do our utmost to hold Reform to account, because what we can see from their campaign literature is that they have no idea about how to run a county council. They've campaigned on national issues, and now they've got to do the hard yards for the people of Kent.
And Ollie, many people will be watching at home saying, I'm not seeing a lot of red on the telly today. Where is Labour in all of this? After all, they do run our government up in Westminster. Of course, it's a different story locally, but why is that? They're just not around as much.
You said, where are Labour, Abby? One answer, Canterbury. That's where their big stronghold has always been here in Kent in recent years. They've managed to cling on in a circle of Liberal Democrat support. It's quite interesting how the geography of Kent has fractured some of the parties. The Greens have strong footing in Whitstable and in parts of Swale. Labour clinging on in Canterbury, but Reform really dominating every stretch of the county, from Folkestone all the way to Dartford and Gravesham. You can't escape the turquoise tidal wave, and the Conservatives very much scattered around in the west of the county. It is quite an interesting situation, one we've never seen before at KCC. A party like Reform taking control is unprecedented. What it means for local policies and local people really remains up for debate.
And Ollie, I imagine you'll be covering all the reaction in the coming days and weeks as well. Ollie, leader in Maidstone outside County Hall, now turning turquoise. Thank you very much for joining us, Ollie. All right, now we've talked the local picture. Let's get a very quick summary before we go this evening of that national picture and where Kent plays its role in that. Bartholomew joins me in the studio now. What's it looking like?
Well, Kent seems to be following the national trend. You said there that County Hall has turned turquoise, and it's not the only one. Reform UK has gained 7 councils from previously being quite a young party, coming out of the blue, if you like, not having any overall control of any councils in its history, now being in charge of 7 local authorities across the country, responsible for bin services, libraries, schools, you name it, all the things that we rely on our local council for. This party now has a lot of responsibility resting on its shoulders. The Liberal Democrats have also gained, and we look at in terms of seats, they've gained 129 seats. They're actually on course to have more seats than the Conservatives, who have lost so far 553 seats nationally. We look at other parties as well. Labour, major losses, 159 seats nationwide lost by them. Some saying now that this could be the end of the two-party system, but we won't know how these votes today, how these results turn into how they transform, how they translate into Parliament, because we have to wait a few more years before we have a general election. But in terms of our local